Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Good afternoon, Jim, or good day, Jim.
Stewart, you've just finished, or in the middle of, I think, an exciting tour of northern British Columbia, looking at how resources and the First Nations can work together. What have you seen so far, and what kind of a message do you have for people?
Well, it's a great weather. It's that time of year. I'm using that to travel around BC and find out what the stories are that are exciting, folks. One thing I'm looking at particularly is how First Nations are engaged in some new ways and some old ways to make the lives that they want for their local people and their whole nations. And it's taken me from Kitimat to Jasper, from the Rockies to the sea, from the north to the south, traveling around in an RV and collecting all kinds of stories and meeting people. It's really amazing. I met with the chief from the Chislata Carrier Nation. That's south of Burns Lake. You got to take a ferry on a lake to get to this community, but it's God's country. Let me tell you, a beautiful place down near Francois Lake. And you know, they're doing forestry. They're interested in energy. They're looking for ways to encourage their people who've moved to cities or other places to come back to the nation because they want to have a future there for their language and their culture. And, you know, this week I was also at the AFN, the Assembly of First Nations. They're meeting in Vancouver. So all across Canada, the Indigenous people have come together to have their annual event where they elect their leadership. And I hear the same thing. You know, there's something happening in Canada right now, Jim. It's really exciting to me how First Nations are defining their future.
Are the people you are talking to, are they opposed to the Kinder Morgan or what used to be the Kinder Morgan pipeline?
It's really surprising what you hear because I think a lot of the expectation you've got, you know, from listening to broadcast or reading the headlines, it sounds like First Nations are opposed to everything. I hear that said all the time. Well, you actually go and talk to First Nations who are living on the land and looking out for their future and trying to figure out ways to develop income and have that balance between the good life and responsibility for the environment and making sure all that's in balance. You know, they want things like pipelines. The majority of First Nations who are, you know, directly on the pipeline route, the vast majority, in fact, want to see the pipeline so much that they are engaged in different sorts of agreements with the people building the pipeline. And that's a pretty sure indication that they want to be involved in those deals.
Do they feel that the ones opposed to it are people not affected by it and shouldn't be opposed to it?
Well, I think I always hesitate to put myself out as, you know, speaking for a perspective that's not my own one. But I think it's safe to say as an observer that very commonly I hear a desire to find greater respect, to not be seen speaking for others or dictating to others how they should live their lives. And I think with First Nations, it's the same as anybody else. You know, people are reluctant to criticize. If someone disagrees with you, well, it's a free country, have your point of view. But I think those who do have a point of view, that is, let's build that, let's support that, they should have the right to have that point of view. And I think too often in these heated discussions, having support or opposition to something is somehow seen as a badge of some, you know, you're a bad person because of that, or, oh, I'm a good person because I have this view. You know, I think we tend to too easily fall into that polarization. And the First Nations who are supportive of the resource projects, I think they're not criticizing those who are against them. They're just trying to find a path for themselves. They want to pay for that health center or clinic. Often it's things like that, you know, where people demand that there be services. Governments not providing all the services that are needed. So how do you get the revenue? You want to tax the pipeline that's on your land. Okay, have an agreement, get some revenue, pay for that health center, problem solved. It's not that hard. It's what's happening out there.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after the break.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. Work programs are underway in Finland and planned for Canada this summer. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol ADD, on Frankfurt symbol 82A1, and the OTCQB symbol AESDZF. Please visit our website arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, no buyers for the Kinder Morgan pipeline that the Canadian government bought. Could this turn out to be actually a very positive thing for taxpayers if we start collecting revenue, just like Kinder Morgan expected to make $40 million on this thing?
Yeah, well, I think anyone who's in institutional investing, anyone who has a look at their pension plan, or indeed the Canada pension plan, or public service pension plans that they might be part of if you're a union member, or, maybe you self-manage your retirement investment, you got some RRSPs. I say look into that investment. You're going to see it stacked up with infrastructure, linear infrastructure such as pipelines are traditionally a part of any sound piece of long-term personal pension-oriented financial management. Why is that? Because it throws off dividends every year. They're very steady. They don't really go up and down in value very much once they're built, and they throw off that nice revenue. So you get a yield on your investment that increases your value add as the market increases over time. That's the recipe for stable investment. Governments invest in things like this all the time. So the idea that the government might be stuck with a finished Kinder Morgan pipeline expansion when the Trans Mountain pipeline is finished, to me, it's a relative term, because being stuck with an investment of that quality is being stuck with an investment that's going to throw off, 5% yield every year forever, plus whatever appreciation in the stock value of it, plus the fact that from a government point of view, you're enabling a huge amount of taxes to be paid, economic activity, all the jobs in the upstream and the oil sands. You hear the opponents to pipelines talk, you think it's only about this pipeline. It's got nothing to do with the commodity moving through. Well, the reality is it's really very little to do with the pipeline. It's everything to do with the commodity upstream that adds to Canadian GDP. The pipeline is a piece of hardware we're building to enable Canadian prosperity. That's all it is. And we have to make sure it's done properly and doesn't ever leak or have these problems. And we can do that. So is it an investment that I, as a taxpayer, personally am okay with? Well, it's a pretty small investment in the great scheme of things. When you're talking government of Canada, this is like $4.5 billion. Okay, they're going to have to get investors to, fund the building of it. That's not a problem. The money's out there, eager to invest. And I think it's a sweet deal. The best deal, though, is now this First Nations consortium, I guess you call it, that's coming forward that wants to buy it or get a piece of it. I don't think they could ever buy 100%. I don't think the fiscal capacity is maybe there right now. But the idea that if you're a First Nation, this pipeline's crossing your land, you can tax it at the local level, but you can also be part of owning the pipeline hardware and get the benefits from that. To me, that represents the maturation of First Nations fiscal development in Canada. I think it's incredibly exciting that we have that capacity and mindset to be thinking that way.
Stewart, using your skills acquired as a Vancouver Sun reporter, you found out an interesting thing about one of these pipeline protesters. What was it?
Well, my main skill as a reporter was, getting to the tea cart before anyone else. But you're thinking other skills. Back when we had a tea cart, it's true. There was a tea cart at the Vancouver Sun newsroom at the old building before we moved downtown, and the tea lady didn't come with us for some reason. Anyways, my other skills, I recently heard that there was a a protester in the Kamloops area who, every time she opens her mouth, it seems to be genocide this or the RCMP are raping us or just ridiculous stuff that you can't believe. But one thing I couldn't believe at first when I heard it was that this protester, believe it or not, comes from a family that owns a gas station in the Kamloops area, a gas station, for many years, the family. And I thought, okay, well, let's look into this a little bit. And, sure enough, that story proved to be true. She doesn't operate the gas station. It's, she says, an uncle who owns it, but it used to be her father until her father, a distinguished Canadian, passed away last year. That I guess it, maybe passed into her uncle's hands. But, she's had the benefit of a hydrocarbon business generating a good living for that family for a very long time. And now she's protesting a pipeline that's going to be, probably when it's built, the safest pipeline in the world. It's going to take some of the traffic from rail cars that carry crude oil off the Fraser River. We should be thankful for that at so many levels. It lets our farmers on the prairies have more space to use rail that they need. It also removes the very small risk that maybe there's an accident involving the river. This is all good. But yet, we have people who, I think it's because Greenpeace, international organization come in. They've got a lot of money. They've got people whose job is to create fear and then fundraise off it. That's what's going on. I think it's kind of a tragedy when we see Greenpeace able to insert itself into Canada's own energy future and conversation and try to move public opinion the way they're trying to do. I don't know what you think, Jim. That's my view.
Well, right now in Canada, we've seen a record number of rail cars dedicated to the movement of oil. In Seattle, they're holding protests demanding that pipelines be built to the waterfront because they don't want dangerous tanker cars rolling around.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say I'm a big believer in the safety practices of our good railway companies in this country. Big believer in that. But I just saw recently someone on Facebook posted a picture having dinner in White Rock or Crescent Beach down that area, and there's a whole line of oil tanker cars going by, and all these joggers and kids and dogs at the beach. They're right there in front of it. I mean, it kind of looks bad. I think it's probably safe, but you think ideally you want to get that movement of a necessary commodity into the safest possible method of transportation, and that just statistically is going to be a pipeline. It's also cheaper, which means more money stays in Canada. We don't have to, spend it on transportation. It is a more efficient way overall. So I think those people in Seattle, they're onto something.
Ask Quebecers how safe oil tanker cars are.
Indeed. Yes.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features through our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE symbol CRL and the pink symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, you said off mic that there are exciting opportunities and things happening with the salmon farming industry. Can you tell us about it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was looking at a hatchery up North Vancouver Island on the side that faces out to the Pacific, kind of a remote area. Got out there this week, had a look. They're raising Chinook there that are going to be let out to sea, and they're going to go out and do their 4-year cycle in the ocean. That's one story of aquaculture that comes from the science and expertise that allows us to do those things. They've had a lot of support to do these programs from the salmon farming industry, which is part of a story that's kind of quiet. Most people don't know that aquaculture is now, salmon farming is the biggest export of agricultural produce in BC. You might think, oh, it's apples from the Okanagan, or maybe it's wheat from the Fraser Valley, or tomatoes from the Fraser Valley, or something. But actually, it's salmon and aquaculture products that we raise on the coast. We've also got oysters and a whole bunch of other products. But salmon farming, to me, as you look at the economics and the global demand, we've got the population of the planet is growing rapidly. You've got increasing demand for healthy protein that's got all these nutrients like omega-3 that's good for your brain. People want it. Increasingly, it's done better and better. I know that salmon farming in BC has at times had a rough ride. Right now, it's having a rough ride, which I think is totally unfair. It's such a clean industry. They've taken out the antibiotics to a great extent. They've got the feed is not based on fish meal that has been controversial in the past. They're managing the sea lice. All of these things get better every year. And in my job, I told you about my travels. I get to meet the people doing this, and I'll tell you, almost in no industry I encounter are the people in love with what they do so much as in salmon farming. It moves you to consider the idea that some people are trying to chase this industry out of BC. To me, that's absolute madness, because it is such a good, positive, green industry.
In Washington State, do they want to ban future fish farms, and should we be worried about escaped Atlantic salmon?
Well, I think we should be worried about any mishap that isn't according to plan, and how do you mitigate that, plan for it. I think in Washington State, there was a very political decision. If you look what the actual scientists are advising, their advice was ignored. I saw a letter, 9 of the top scientists in fish and wildlife in Washington State wrote a letter after the decision to end ocean farming of salmon, saying the science does not support this decision. So it's a real myth. But the risk of an escape, it's actually something you wouldn't want to happen in your business. That's losing money. You don't want that to happen. So a rational operator would not allow that. But suppose it happened. I'll tell you what. You go back to the history of hatcheries and salmon enhancement on the Pacific coast. Go back to the 19th century. And you'll discover, this is on the record, well sourced, that Atlantic salmon have been introduced to rivers by sports anglers over a century ago, and for many decades after that, because they wanted to establish Atlantic salmon on the Pacific coast to have them to fish. And guess what? It never worked. They released thousands of these into estuaries and rivers to get them to breed and establish themselves in a river. You can't do it. They won't do it. It's a funny thing. I don't know why that is, but when these occasional net pen mishaps occurred, like happened in Washington State, and a bunch of them, like a couple 100,000 of these salmon escaped. I don't know where they are now, but they're not going to go and breed with other species of salmon. It doesn't happen in nature that sockeye suddenly start breeding with Chinook. Why would Atlantic start breeding with pinks? Doesn't make any sense. So that's not a risk. And experience tells us that they don't establish themselves in rivers on the Pacific coast. It just has never happened, even when you want it to happen. So I think these risks are, not to say that, let's not worry when that happens. It shouldn't be allowed to happen, but it's not a catastrophic thing. In science, there's no basis for that.
Do fish farms spread disease to wild salmon?
Well, this is, again, a question of the science has to be vigilantly performed. The collection of knowledge and the advancement of knowledge through science is ever important at aquaculture if we're going to depend on this. When it comes to one specific thing, there was a new study. This has been a little controversial. I know there's some groups that have formed up to say, watch out for piscine riro virus. It's going to destroy our salmon. Well, the definitive authoritative studies have come out in the last couple of weeks from government scientists, the experts who know this stuff say, we've looked at it. This is not a danger, and when I look at it, what I realize is, no one's really saying this, but I'll tell you, it's wild salmon who are out there in the ocean exposed to all the diseases. In one drop of seawater, there's 10 million viruses. The wild salmon are raised in that. Their eggs are hatched in fresh water, but then they go right into the sea as smolts. They spend their whole lives in that seawater. The farm salmon, by contrast, they have no diseases when they're brought out of hatcheries. They have vaccines to protect them against disease, and they're put in there. They're not presenting a disease risk to wild salmon. It's actually the opposite. I think the scientists are showing that when you study this thing, you don't find that risk. So why the alarm? I think it's misplaced. I think there are other issues, and I think some people are trying to use that issue. I think a lot of it is commercial interests, fishing interests that want to keep the price of salmon at a spot that is to their liking and try to protect or create a monopoly on the sale of fish. I was at a fishing lodge this week where they will not serve wild fish. They will only serve farmed salmon to their guests. These are people from London and New Zealand and Chicago who come out to fish in BC. The lodge serves them only farmed salmon while they go and fish for wild salmon to bring home, because that's what they came here for. And the lodge owners told me, this is fantastic food. We're pleased to serve it, and we're protecting wild salmon when we use farm salmon. That's what's happening.
Stewart, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. His website, resourceworks.com. You can find him on Twitter at SJMuir. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at HowStreet. Our very popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show or our guests, like Stewart, can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.